and we will go ahead and get started. Stephanie Johnson, we've been connected for over 10 years on LinkedIn, but really didn't get to know her much until recently. I've been chairing the local chapter for a couple of years with the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum, and recently stepped down from that. But Stephanie, with her COO background, we've been able to connect and become a little bit more acquainted through that organization. But like I said, we've known each other for a number of years, or I've been connected for many, many years. And back in the days when she was at Zycron, she's currently the COO and in the seat of integrator. We will learn more about that word here in a moment, at Acklen Avenue, which is a software consulting technology company. Let Stephanie tell you more about that if she wishes. She is the one that, speaking of keeping things moving, she's the Stephanie, I don't know if you appreciate this, but I've kind of named you this morning the smooth operator. All right. So kind of keeping things moving, and Acklen is apparently a very innovative and growing company, and her role, where she joined them last year, is to keep that growth going and keeping it moving, and that involves a lot of greasy and tired wheels. Okay, we were talking about that a moment ago. You have to do a lot of different things, and she's been able to effectively keep that going and enabling that company to grow. And I'm sure they feel lucky, as we will recognize, to have her as part of the organization. She also has a bachelor's degree in healthcare administration at Tennessee Tech. Excuse me. Whoa, that was bad. Tennessee State. And also MBA from Strayer. Mother and a grandmother, and exciting times for those of us who get to experience that. And so, Stephanie, I'm going to turn this over to you, and we're excited about this. For those of you not familiar with the topic, we had someone speak about this a few years ago, but now we're learning more about it, of the EOS Entrepreneurial Operating System. I didn't know what this was at all until about 2 years ago, and I'm now continuing to learn, and learning also that as a CFO or financial executive, we have the opportunity to also be in that seat. So, Stephanie, so glad you're here. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you take the floor.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It is early, so I really do appreciate it. Just like, I'm going to go through this presentation, but you can interrupt me with questions, because I kind of like that. Something will occur to you and you'll want to ask. So I'm saying, go ahead and ask me. Because I have sat in meetings where I have a burning question and it's really, really hard. My legs start to shake. So I like interaction. So stop me whenever. But I'm going to go to my next slide, because I had some stuff here, but I'll introduce myself. What's interesting is, George, I have worked for startups probably my entire career, and I really, really didn't get my business chops until 2000. And that was when I first started at Zycron. And so I have been a COO, or in a COO seat, or an implementer seat, or an integrator seat since 2006. And so I've been able to learn a lot from people, because I do remember when I didn't look so great on paper. So somebody gave me an opportunity and I kind of grasped it, and that's how I kind of ended up where I am. But this has been my last two companies. Stratazan was a SaaS company, and I'm working now for a software company. But both of those companies, one was a really, truly a startup. And, you know, we were 15 or 20 people when we were starting to implement EOS, and we were self-implementing. And then now with Acklen Avenue, I'm also self-implementing EOS for them as well. So it's been out for, EOS has been out for over 18 years. Are you guys familiar with entrepreneurial operating systems? Yes and no, so good. Like, if you have questions or more, it's something that I missed, please, the concept is a simple concept, but implementing it is the challenge, right? It seems it's simple, but in order to be successful in implementing it, you have to really understand all of the components that make up EOS. So I want to just cover, I want to stop there and just say, you guys could unmute too, please, by all means. But like this, if there's anything that you have a question for me in terms of my background or anything like that, you can ask me, or I'm just going to continue to move on until you do have a question. But here's what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to do an overview of EOS, an introduction, and some stats that you can find anywhere on their website. Again, I am a self-implementer, so I'm not an EOS facilitator. I don't have their special certification. I've just been in it in the School of Hard Knocks, and so I'm here to share what I know. And then we're going to cover the 6 key components of EOS, and I'm going to go into some details about what those are, how I've used them. And then I'll explain at the end what a level 10 is. And then also after that, I have some tools and books that I would recommend that you guys get into if you haven't read them. But also just want you to know this is Vegas rules. So what goes on in Fang stays in Fang. Okay, we good? Great. Because something might come out and you're going to be like, I'll tell you something that I know, and I'm going to protect the innocent. So, EOS has over 1.6 million books that they've sold just on Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's been around for a while, probably over 20 years at this point. There's 450 plus professional implementers across the country. I believe this number has gone down a couple of years ago. People who were using it had their own consulting business on EOS. They were requiring them to do some things. So some of those facilitators went out, did their own thing, and then switched up the plan so as not to be in violation. So you could probably find facilitators that have just put their own brand on this. I'm actually working with one now that's put his own brand on it, but it's still EOS. And then there's over 130,000 companies that are using this today. And again, this is my second company that I am implementing it at, and I love it. I get very excited about it. But who this is really, really good for is like the companies that I've self-implemented have been anywhere from a 20 person employee company to a 200 person employee company. From a $1 million company to, it was Zycron. I was there when I grew that company from 1 million to 50 million. And then here at Acklen Avenue, we were at 5 million, but we've already surpassed that number. And we're looking to be at about 15 million by the end of 2022. And so with Stratazan, same, just growing it from a $5 million company to a $20 million company. And I think a lot has to do with being able to push things and get things done and move them forward. And the things that stop us are, people, process. We have some issues that we have to deal with it, or we are talking about the same issues, we never get them solved. But if you are an open-minded person, if you are growth-oriented, like George, I know you're with the startup, you're like, that's a growth-oriented company. This is something that can push that for you. I feel like it could be done in short order. With Acklen Avenue, I started there in January. And we are rocking and rolling. I think my CEO is dumbfounded, but I'm gonna tell you something about being in that integrator seat. Is I'm in the integrator seat. He is in the visionary seat. And if he is ready, if like the problem that I've run into in the past, if CEOs aren't ready to release the power, then it makes it really, really hard for me to do what I need to do as a COO. And I decided to make a change last year. And I actually had 5 offers by the time I decided to go with Acklen, but I based it on whether or not that CEO was ready for a COO. We're like really, really ready for that. So that's kind of how it happened. So again, we're going to go over the 6 components of EOS. I'm just going to give you an overview of the model. And so in EOS, the 6 components are vision. They're going to be vision, people, issues, traction, process, and data. I'm going to go in more detail, but essentially that in order to strengthen your company, you have to strengthen these 6 key areas. And so every business has its issues, but typically, like, we're all human beings, like a company can handle max out at 130 issues at a time. And so what we are finding, like I said, is our issues never get resolved. And so the EOS model is a guide for how to get those things done. And it's super messy at first, but once people get the hang of it, you'll see like it'll start to make sense. And honestly, when I was trying to create this presentation to make it make sense to other people, it was like, it's like giving you some examples in real time is probably going to be the way to do that. That's how I'm going to do it. But like these are the essentials, and I'm going to probably just kind of harken back to the way I'm doing that now with Acklen Avenue and why we've been on a very like pretty quick, fast trajectory of getting people on board to this EOS system. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. So let me just go to the next thing. So when we're talking about vision, this is where you have to start. You have to understand like where the company is, who they want to be, what do they want to do. And it starts with the core values. And the reason I say this is where you start with EOS, but this is so important because even yesterday in a conversation that I'm having with the teams, the decisions that we're making are based on what we decided we were going to do and who we wanted to be. So it's like, if I'll give you an example, is like yesterday, someone was like in my SLT team was like, hey, what about consulting work? And what if we do this and what if we do that? And we just had our offsite to kind of finalize that. But I said, let's talk about the core values, who we said we were going to be in our core focus, and what we said we were going to target, like what our 1 year and our 3 year target was. And if that was an easy way to decide, well, no, we didn't say we were going to be that type of company. Like we're not going to go sell agile teams as a consultant. So this just as an example of how you have to have this locked down before you do anything else. And so with
Stephanie, one little quick question. The template that you're displaying, is that available on the EOS website? I think I've seen these are familiar to me from the book, The Attraction, but we can get access to these, I think.
Yes, if you go to eosworldwide.com, you can download every single one of these templates and create your own book. Like I also have a notebook, but if you go there, you can download all of these for free. And they have like a ton of like blogs, videos too that are super helpful for people who don't understand. But I also recommend that, like, if you are implementing or want to read Traction, I also have the Traction book and I have it on Audible, but read it over and over again. Harken back to it if you want. Like I've read it several times. I also have it in short form so that sometimes I'm like, let me just go back and refresh. But yes, these are all available on eosworldwide.com. But let's break this down. So basically, like core values are important. They keep you grounded. And you find that it's like you can use it almost in every single conversation that you have, but it's who you are, what you want to be. And you're going to use it a lot. In core focus, it just hones in on like your company's niche, what their purpose is. What are they good at? What do they want to be good at? Because oftentimes and I know you guys probably have experienced this, that there's so many things that we want to be, but we never pick out the one that we should be and the one that we want to be and we're going to follow. And that if we don't know that at the higher levels of our organization, we can't, the idea is to know that at the higher levels and then you those things push down. And so if you go and talk to anyone, if you ask them what our core values are, they should be able to tell you what they are. So you don't need to have, over 7, but like a good 4 or 5 is a good number. Yes, sir.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Core values. Do they give some definitions? Because I would think that would be hard for a lot of people to fully understand. Somebody's core values may be somebody's something else, and I'm just curious. And I have the book. It's been a while since I've been through it, but are you able to clearly develop the framework for core values?
So that is an excellent question. When you are discussing core values with your SLT, it's kind of the seed is planted with your visionary, your CEO, But to get to the actual core values is the discussion you have to have with your SLT involved. For instance, like when my CEO, he's not motivated by money. I am actually on this team because of I want to grow the team and I want us to, eventually we're going to get sold. So, but when he talks about what he wants to do with the company, that's kind of the story that we led with. And then everybody kind of contributed to that conversation until we got down to we only have 4, by the way. We got down to the 4 or 5 things that we wanted to be. So I don't know if that helps you at all because it isn't easy. You have to discuss it a lot.
That's why I raised the question, because it isn't easy.
Yeah.
I have not found an easy way to educate, because you're really educating a lot of people when you say core values, and everyone has a different definition. I don't mean to drag this out, but
No, you're not.
yeah, it's not easy. So okay.
It's not easy, but it's what you have to do is it's what when we get to the people component of this will be so valuable to you because you will rate people on whether or not they're adhering to company values. And so it's like it's not like my individual, like I would hope that like my core values are the same as the ones we do, but like seek first to understand is a core value. My success is your success is a core value. Or we aim to educate and treat. We aim to educate, continually educate and train our employees. Like that's a core value. And so, yeah, those are the things I'm talking about is like, it's not easy, but this took us 5 conversations, separate offsite conversations before we whittled it down and we're like, we feel good about it.
I just want confirmation that it ain't easy.
Absolutely. You are right. You are absolutely right. So then even all of these are hard, like even your core focus, when you're trying to determine what your company is going to do, right? And sometimes that involves having a tough decision about maybe taking out one of your, we don't do this. This is not what differentiates us. This isn't unique. Like when you're talking about it, we talked about the 3 uniques. We talked about, what differentiates us from competition so that we can hone in on what our niche is going to be. Like when this may look simple, but it's not. It requires multiple conversations before you all get into an agreement. And then, 10-year target, even when we're talking about a 10-year target, it's like pie in the sky. What do we want to do? And we do this and we do it pie in the sky because we'll bring it back around when we talk about what kind of like what our focuses are going to be, like what our rocks are going to be like for quarters and for the year. So like when you do this with your team, this truly is a pie in the sky, but you bring it back with actual numbers, with actual rocks and quarterly goals and things like that. And then with our marketing strategy, it's basically like, that differentiator, what's our value proposition, what's gonna that 3 unique conversation is there. What's our proven process? You determine that. And then the 3-year picture, like what is, you talk about like what kind of revenue are we going to bring in? What are we going to, how are we going to bring it in? What are we going to measure? Who's going to be accountable for that? And you start to create a list. And I will tell you that your list will be really long, but you're going to come back and you're going to revisit it again. And you're going to start chiseling down. So the second part of that vision traction organizer is this. So this is where it gets down to more like, this is the stuff we got to do right now. So Acklen Avenue just had their offsite. It's with the SLT. And so, we talked about what must we get done in the next year? Less is more. We overcomplicate things sometimes, but basically keep it simple. You want to keep it simple. What do we have to accomplish in this year? Well, Acklen Avenue has a lot of operational debt. So we knew that like processes were a thing we had to get done this year. Like we have to get it done. And so that's one of the things that we said, hey, this is the stuff we got to get done. I think we ended up with 7, right at 7. I think we had 15. So we list out everything, and then we combine the things into buckets that are similar. And so like we have to determine that. And then with the rocks are things that we can get done, we can bite off in 90-day chunks. So once you know what you got to do all year, then you'll talk about how you break it down into the quarterly goals. We call them rocks. And so those are like it helps us focus. It helps us actually get things done and outcomes. And like the reason why we want to say less is more is because 90 days is the human limit. Like you need 90 days for the bigger things. You can't take on a bunch of things that can't be, 3. I think 3 is a big number for an individual to take on. And so you want to make sure that you're hitting the outcomes. And then it also, here's where you're like, what are our issues? Be honest. I've had to be honest in my conversations when it comes to spots and positions and people where, we don't have a right person in the right seat. We'll talk more about that. But like we put in what our long-term issues are, and we put in, those are the ones that take us maybe like quarterly things to fix. And then we talk about short-term, which are weekly things that we got to fix. So those are the differences between, we have the long-term issues and the short-term issues. Any questions about just this section before I move on? Okay. Next, we're going to talk about people. This is a big deal. This is an actual accountability chart for Acklen Avenue. So one of the first things that I had to do, because once you say, hey, this is my vision, this is who we are, this is what we do, you have to have people who are going to be able to achieve that vision and follow that vision. This is hard. So I walked into a leadership team that was already a leadership team. And it would have been great if everyone was in the right seat and I didn't have to make changes, but that's not going to happen. And so how you approach this is, it's around like, you have to let people understand that what got you here today doesn't get you here tomorrow. Like what got you to the seat today is not going to work as much as like, you're going to have to make some changes. There was a question. If someone could like shout out that question before I keep going, I'll answer that. It was in the chat and then I lost it. Was it something about, let me see if I can get it back. Oh, I thought it came through. Oh, sorry. I guess I didn't see it.
However, you raised an interesting question, which is the right people, right seat. I've dropped into situations where it was obvious that, and that's the difficult thing is convincing people above and convincing people at the same level and convincing people down below. And you get different issues, you get different impressions of what it takes to be in that seat. So I presume that you spend a fair amount of time noodling that one.
Yeah, in the 3 months that I've been at Acklen, this has taken up probably 85% of my time. So I'm going to tell you how I did it. Okay. Here's where the visionary and the integrator relationship is super duper important. Because what my visionary's done is said, you make the decisions. I'm not getting in the way. I know these people. It's hard for him. So like he's giving me the authority to make the changes that I need. That's number one. It's like, man, when you're able to like have that kind of trust with your CEO, it allows you to just operate fully at 100%. So the way that I had to do this was you look at the functions first. That's what I wanted to define. So I spent a lot of time. This wasn't about the people. And so when I first started to fill out this accountability chart, by the way, this is in 90.io, which is a tool I'll tell you guys about. But like when I first started to look at this, I didn't look at it from a people perspective. I actually looked at it from the what the functions were. And I defined every function I thought it should be. I made several iterations, but at the end of the day, this was about what the function is. So I'm defining those major functions for the business. Then I started putting it into the accountability chart. And then I started to clarify what those roles and responsibilities were for each seat. I didn't come out with like 12 things. I actually tried to do it in like a 5 or 6, So as you see here, some of these just have, they're all going to have LMA, which is lead management accountability. They're different. Like there's optimized recruiting for the CPO, optimized onboarding and training. So I built that before I put a person in this seat because this one was open, but also I moved people around. Once I had those functions set, I moved them into the areas. And that's not easy either, because it's hard to say to someone, say if I take, our CFO, Dan, now he's perfect for that role. But if I said, hey, Dan, I think you need to be at another spot in our organization, or Dan, I don't think that you have the capability to do the job. Those are hard conversations to have with people. And also, if you're a COO, this is your job. You got to have a really thick skin. So I have had to move some people who were originally at an SLT level into another area of our organization. But sometimes if there's not an area in your organization, then it's out of the organization. Luckily, I didn't have to do that, but like we did move people out to different levels, and those were hard conversations because they believed that they were. But how I did this was like, I utilize the core values. I want you to be successful and I want to set you up for success. And this spot that I'm putting you in is going to be better for the business. And so like, fast track 2 months, that person who I had to move, who, by the way, was basically like, you've only been here 20 days. What do you know? Like all kinds of things. Like they're happy today. If they're happy, they're in their role, they get it. And then, but it doesn't always happen that way. And it's tough. But this is where it's like, if you don't have the right people in, how many of you guys have worked in a place where you're like, oh my God, why is this person in this role? They don't know what they're doing. They're not moving us forward. Like it occurs all the time. Like, I feel like, George, you were probably, you were laughing because, this is like, that's one of our bigger issues to solve. And it's hard to tell someone, hey, you don't know these things. Sometimes though, attitude makes a difference. So I always want to give people an opportunity, but that's a big problem. And if you're really, really interested in aligning up your company for growth, it's one you have to do. You can't skip around it. You can't skirt around it. You just can't. And so I have some tools here. So basically when I've built out these functions, the next thing I do is I input them into this people analyzer. So if you notice at the very top, those are going to be your core values. And then you see the last three say, get it, want it, capacity to do it, right? So let's talk about that. One, what the core values for your company are. We talked about that. We put them at the top. The get it, want it, capacity to do it is like, you're going to ask yourself, you're going to put in Brian and Amy and whoever else in your organization, and you're going to analyze them according to your core values. And if they get it, which is, do they understand the job that needs to be done? Do they understand the role? Do they understand it? Do they want it? So sometimes you talk to people and they don't want to be a manager. You think they can be based on what you see, but some people don't want to do that. Or they want to be, or I actually moved somebody out of a sales role into a marketing role because it was obvious she was she would be excellent in that role. But like, so you're saying, hey, do they get it? Do they want to do it? And do they have the capacity to do it? And capacity could be either, are they capable? Can they grasp hold of this and take it and run with it? Or do they have time? And sometimes you're going to give somebody a no because they don't have the time, but they can do it. So they're probably in multiple seats. So you got to fix that. So basically you'll take all these people and run them through this. And then, that's how you start to understand where changes need to be made. The other thing that we use when we talk about people is that get it, want it, capacity to do it. This is just a more explanation. Does the person sitting in that seat have what it takes to execute on the role? You bring in core values, you bring in the function. You still these are just some forms on EOS that I think would be really, really helpful in explaining this even further. So any questions? Because that's essentially, that's the people component. But do you guys see how it kind of has if you understand the vision and core values, you understand what the functions are, then you understand, do you have the right people in the right seat, and you make those choices. Those take time, But if you get it right, now you're cooking with Crisco. Now you have fire. You're building a rocket ship. That's how I explain. I'm building a rocket ship. And if I can get that right, then I'm ready for anything. I'm ready for the rest, right? So now that we have the right, we know what we're doing. We got, we know the functions. We got the right people in the right seat. Now we're going to talk about the data component. So you guys are CFOs, so you know that data, like if whatever you are measuring, you will improve, right? So this is an example, real life example of actual, like these are some sales metrics that we put in. I will say that what I did with this team is just say whatever you think would be a right metric for us to monitor. We will do that, and over time we will either come up with better metrics or we will reduce this list to the most important metrics for this SLT. So like right now we've got them dumped into one, because one of the things that happens, we're just talking about that higher level of the organization, SLT. Over time, you will then teach your directors, your VPs to do the same thing for their people. So they'll run it through a people analyzer. They'll get people in the right seats. They'll start running their own meetings. And some of these things you won't have to look at from a higher level. You'll look at it at a lower level. But my approach is whatever metric that you think you have that you think is going to be important, let's put that in and we'll discuss it, because what it does is it gets people in the habit of putting metrics in. And how we use this today is like we are trying to better predict what's happening. So this is built off of the pipelines that we're generating, that we're saying, okay, we want to be able to predict better when things are going to close. We want to analyze if we close lost things. So that's important. The thing that's missing here that you don't see is like, where's our client health at? And so that, like, if we have, like, the thing that Acklen also didn't have was a really solid way to get to their pipeline. So while I'm also implementing, I'm also doing those things in the background with the CFO. It's like, we need pipeline, we need a better way to budget. So we redid the budgeting process. We redid the pipeline process to get to a number, so we understood where our goals are. So that's just my approach, but basically this helps people, it levels the playing field. So anyone can have a number. Anyone answering the phone can have a number. Answer the call in 3 rings. I don't know. But if you give people a number, they're held accountable for those things. This provides transparency across the entire organization. So we always know where things are. So some of the feedback, like, is from my CEO, is like, I asked him, like, how are you feeling? Because a lot of CEOs are like, once you take away what they see on the day-to-day, they get nervous. But he's like, transform this. I know what's going on. And some of the things I didn't even know I should know. So he knows what's going on, but provides visibility. But every single department has P&L responsibility, but that's like looking in the rearview mirror, whereas scorecards is looking out the front of the car. It's like, this is what's coming. Like, it's looking out the window. It's making sure that everyone in the company has, they know where we are, whatever we're delivering, what our metrics are. So yeah, P&L is looking back, but like if we do it this way with the metrics in 90 and we talk about this stuff every week, it's looking out the window. Any questions about that so far?
Yeah, Stephanie,
Yes, sir.
do you manage this process a little bit? I used to do this with divisional presidents, and we'd start out with, what information do you look at? It was invariably, it was 20 or 30 items, and we'd all note it down. And then I'd say, okay, let's try to pare this down. I didn't want to tell them that nobody could keep track of 20 or 30 items, and then we get down at the end of the day to 3. And it depended on the level in the organization. Obviously, the CFO is interested in 3 things. The accounting manager may be interested in 3 different things, but basically I tried to manage that, because if I just let them go 20 items, I know that they would get lost in the weeds. So do you do that? I mean, you said that you allow people to kind of put out things that they want to track, do you ever try to initially limit the number, or at least try to get them to focus on a smaller number?
Yes. So let me just paint the scenario of the team is very, very brand new, right? They didn't have the infrastructure, even like they have like even the SLT, every single one of those people were in multiple seats. They weren't tracking anything. They weren't they weren't doing they weren't doing budget planning properly. So the reason why, like, I agree with you, and over time, I know this list will get lower, but what it does is it holds people accountable. And we also have 2 business units. So you'll see there's an HU, which is a hero unit, and then there's an AA, which is an Acklen Avenue. So they're operating separately, which we also need to figure some things out with that. But yes, I believe that these should be reduced. But like, things like, we want to know what revenue we recognized. We want to know what we lost. And nobody at the time was tracking the renewal revenue. So I think that this will definitely be reduced down to the important things for SLT. And then some of those measurables will be on just the team level. So I agree with you. Basically the way, my CEOs were like, hey, if you were on an island, I know this is probably an old analogy, what is the thing that you would need to know in order to run your business if you were stranded on said island? But this is my own approach to saying, let me let you guys dip your toe in to see how helpful this will be. And then they started thinking about, oh man, we want to know if one of our goals, like one of our 1-year goals, if you go back to Vision Traction, was we will have 90 heads, total head count on Hero Unit. So they want to track where they are. So that's why they have the number, the total head count, that goal needs to change, but it's 90 and they're at 59. So they're keeping, everybody knows kind of where we're at with it. But I agree with you. It has to, you can't have too many because that's, you don't want to have too many. You want to have some key ones. We're working on it.
Stephanie, I know we've only basically hit 3 of these components so far, but what's interesting is even though we have a label called EOS, this stuff is just common sense.
You would think so. You would think so.
Okay. All right. Well, I was just keep going. Keep going.
But it's a compilation of all of Gino Wickman, all of the books, the business books and the business sense that we've learned. It's just, they don't tell you, it's like a compilation of all of those things, but nobody tells you how to take those and put them into this, except for EOS. So they're just really pulling from all that knowledge, from all the business books that we read and putting it into y'all, this is how you got to do it. And I know it sounds crazy, but if it were common sense, then none of the businesses would be in trouble and they would be able to move themselves along just fine. But they don't, they can't, and it's these 8 or these 6 components that are the reason, because they're not
it's almost like common sense is an idealistic type concept. Actually getting it done is different than just having common sense. So good points.
Being in a go ahead, John. Sorry.
No, I said you got to first define common and then define sense. And you'll get a wide variety of definitions out of that. George, I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. Being in a unique position in a startup, I'm seeing this and I'm thinking in terms of these are all the things we're setting out to do. So it's a reminder to do the things that you actually set out to do. I can see all of these things developing in our organization right now. And once you get a lot of things moving, it's easy to have your fingers off them. You're looking at 10 things, but you're not seeing the most important thing. And I see it as not losing sight of those things that you want to do. Is that making sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Now that makes sense.
The other thing is, I presume there's some attempt to get some success as defined of meeting goals, so people get a sense that we're actually making progress. And that's always, but sometimes the goals are too high or too far in the future. You get a lot of people that say, this is ridiculous, I can't do this. So that's a combination of your skills and expertise meshed with the CEO, meshed with some people that have been around the horn a bit as to how to identify those that we know we can achieve in the first 90 days, the first 180 days, and make sure we do, because that way then the troops think that there is light at the end of the tunnel and it's not the train coming at them.
Yeah, we like it is people want, I think, I have started at places where we started to implement this, but like people will say, like, I was about to leave. There's no structure. I got too many bosses. I don't know what we're doing. There's no transparency, like all those things. And then once we started this, people were like, one, moving them into right places is big, right? You don't, people like, there are a lot of people who won't complain, but like once you get right people in right seats, that is a powerful thing. You tap into people that they like, and you see it immediately. Same as if they're in the wrong seat, you see it immediately because they're going to continue to fail. And we're saying we don't want anybody to fail, but we got to move our company forward. And the way that I think about these things is like one person versus 180 or 200 or 20. Like, I need to make sure that we, like, that one person that might be in a wrong seat will affect everyone and how we do and run our business every day. So if you think about it in those terms, then it makes sense to go ahead and make those moves, even though they're hard. This first part of this presentation, guys, are difficult. They are so hard to do. You're dealing with emotions. You're dealing, like, you're having to make decisions. And I don't know about you, but like, I've been doing this for a while, but it never gets easier, especially when you're having to have those kind of conversations where, look, I think you'd be better fit here. I'm still a person. I have empathy, but I also understand the greater good that this is going to do for us, later on. So.
And the unsaid thing is the CEO has got to be clearly behind the process. And you mentioned that cases where he isn't or she isn't, there can be where you get frustrated.
Yeah. I tell you, I love him so much because I feel like I am tapped in completely. Like it, and he just, I don't even know, like, I feel like I could I would bring him with me and teach a whole session on why that works.
Yeah.
Like, it's a key. So
it's critical. I've been in situations where I got fired because of that. And I should have quit before I got fired, but you learn. That's how you learn.
I tell you what, man, I am so grateful for every place that I've ever been. They've taught me something new every single time. And I brought it with me. So sorry, I'm going to close this because I love the sun, but it is blinding me right now. So let's move on to the issues, right? So issues, this is also important. So with the issues and figuring this out, it is in direct proportion to your ability to solve things. So you have to, so now you've got right people in the right seats. They're going to bring up issues. And in these meetings, anyone can bring up an issue. So, the question though, people always, like, this is where you identify, discuss, and solve these things. And everyone always kind of like trip over this. This is a big learning curve for people. So at first it's like, you bring in whatever issue you want. You bring in whatever you want into an issues list. So this will happen when you're doing L10, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But like the issues, anyone can bring in an issue. But what will happen is in your meeting, you will rate which ones are the most important. So yesterday we have our SLT L10. I'll teach you about L10s here in a second, but it's our SLT level 10 meeting. And throughout the week, people put in their issues. They put them in the system in 90.io. We have this list. I think yesterday it was like 12. And they have to take a stab at what they think the real issue is. But anyone can bring anything. It can be anything, everything on the leadership team that you want to do. But collectively, you're going to look at that issues list and you're going to decide what's the most important things we have to tackle this week. And that's where things go, well, no, nobody cares about, we need to, up the reimbursement policy. No, I got this real important thing about, like, one of our issues yesterday was whether or not we should add to our service line. That was a very good thing to bring up and discuss. And so I think one of the biggest challenges when it comes to the issues are just, honing in on issues. But for now, this is where what they call identify, discuss, and solve. And I just want to just introduce it to you, because in a minute I'm gonna run you through kind of like what an L10 looks like. So and then the process component. So in EOS, you want to take your 6 to 10 most important company processes that you want to document. And the way I would explain this is, if you look, like if you have a customer success team or a sales team, or you want to have them do this exercise and go, if we don't do one of these processes, we're going to fail. That's what I want you to write down about what your key processes are. So for us, if I take our hero unit, which is our staff aug part of the business, if we don't do onboarding and orient them on how to submit their time weekly, well, we're going to have a problem with the client because we can't bill them accurately. So like every division will take what they think their key processes are, and you want to document 20% of those, just 20%. And so if you can document 20% of the most important key processes, that will get you 88% of the way there. So like if you say, hey, someone's going to have like this one thing has to happen or else we're going to fail. You have to ask it of every department, and then you know what your key processes are going to be in a list. And then then you want to make sure that everybody understands what those are. And I guess the rule of 7, show it to them 7 times and they'll start to retain it. But basically that's what this is stuff that we haven't even I'm kind of doing this as we go, but we have it as a company overall. I've got different people working on that as a rock. Like in their division, they're going to tell me what their key processes are, but there's different ways to get the information. Just so you know, there's not just one way to skin a cat. There's several ways to skin it. Any questions before? And I'm gonna, these are the easier ones to kind of go through because the hard parts are before this. And then this is a real photo. They don't know I used it, but a real photo. That's our CPO, Jennifer Fonseca. She just joined us. And then our CFO, Dan McCarthy. We were in our offsite last week, and I'm just taking pictures, but we have our meeting pulse is we have a weekly L10, that's SLT, and also departments should have a weekly meeting. We have a quarterly meeting, which is facilitated. I actually get an outside facilitator so that I don't, this is the only time that a COO can sit back and not have to lead something, which I love. So we have a facilitator to do the quarterly and run us through what I just showed you, revisiting our VTO, right? Revisiting our rocks for our quarterly. Where are we with what our goals were for Q1? And then we this last one was, where are we with Q1? And what do we need for Q2? So we basically are saying, did we hit our goals or we didn't hit our goals and why? And then creating the new ones. And then we have an annual meeting, an annual planning meeting for the next year. So it's just important to get on a cadence. And this is going to also be a challenge because people, if they're not used to meeting, people not used to meeting, they're not you need participation, you need but you have the right people in the right seat. So ideally they should understand and they'll grasp hold of the concept and be fine. So, and then I'm going to move into I'm going to pause it for a second before I just move into this last part on the level 10 meeting and how it goes. Any questions? Okay.
Stephanie, just a quick note. We've got about 10 minutes. I know John has to leave, so I will just want to give you an idea.
Yeah. That's why I'm let me keep going because we can talk about this a lot.
I was going to say, let's keep going.
Let me give you an idea of what a level 10 looks like. This isn't at level 10. It's an hour and a half. This is what you have to do weekly. This is what we do weekly. Not only do we do it for the SLT, we also have sales ops doing this and finance team doing this. So there's a segue for the SLT. It's an hour and a half. For the other meetings, it's an hour. So we have adjusted it. But basically, a segue is you start this meeting and you start out by everybody telling you one good piece of business news and one piece, a good piece of personal news. And then you review the scorecard, but there's no discussion, right? Once we get through the segue, it takes 5 minutes. We review the scorecard. If someone has something that they want to discuss, then you will move that into the issues list. You don't discuss it. You just reviewing the numbers. If someone has a question about any of it, you move it in, you put it over to the issues list. You keep it moving. Rock review, it's basically tell me if you're on track, off track, or finished. No discussion. If you're off track, we move it over to the issues list. Customer employee headlines, these are just updates. Like basically you're gonna say, if you can give updates, you can give kudos, you can give shout outs, you can just, I don't know, say, hey, I'm gonna be out next week. It's that short. Then, so any issue that you have produces to-dos. If you don't have to-dos, then you're not solving for it, or it's just a symptom and not an issue. So you'll figure this out, but like the to-dos, people are responsible for going in and clicking off to-dos as they get them done and not having to go, like sometimes we go through the list and people will say done or not done, I need another week, and we'll adjust it there. But we want to spend the majority of our time in our IDS. This is our list of issues that I was talking about, so that we can get as much of we have enough time to get as much of those done as we can. And so that's where you have that list of issues and everybody votes for the first, second, and third. If you solve those, you go for the next, first, second, and third. And every one of those should have to-dos if they're actual issues. In this meeting though, is where you spend the most time because you have to make sure that we've actually identified the right issue. So as a facilitator of that meeting, I sometimes will go restate your issue, because I'm not sure if that's the real issue until we get to it. And once we get to it, then we discuss. But a lot of time is spent on getting to the right issues with the team, because we don't want to spend time discussing things that don't matter. Like we don't know what the real problem is. So I will keep asking until we get to the right issue. And then we start discussing it until we're like, okay, and then we solve it. Yesterday I threw out, hey, you're beating a dead horse. I think we can move on because we've already got, sometimes the solves are just like the first step to the solve, right? Before we can solve the whole thing. But that's where you create the to-dos for people who are accountable to get it done. And this is where you're going to see things begin to move for your organization, because things get solved. The biggest feedback across all the L10s that I am in are like, oh my God, we've been talking about this for years and there's no movement on it. And now we're discussing it and we got action items. We're moving it, solving it. So then we conclude and everybody gets to rate that meeting. And what you're aiming for is 80%. If you can get above 80%, great. But if you're going to at least get 80% where people think that they were heard, we understood the issue, we discussed it, we solved it, that's fantastic. So I'm going to keep going because this last part is like, this is what I suggest you read. Traction, Get a Grip, Rocket Fuel. Those were the things that, like, Rocket Fuel was the first thing to where I understood what the integrator visionary role should be, like how it plays together. But Traction, I've read many, many times. I've had my team read it over and over again. It's my book, and then Get a Grip. So I would suggest if you are thinking about doing this, to have your team, you read it and then have your team read it. And then the other thing are the EOS tools that we use. I use 90 now, but I used to use the Traction tools. I believe they've gotten better at their capabilities. But 90 at the time that I switched last year had more capability than Traction tools. But then I heard that Traction tools were making some improvements. So I would say look at both of those. And if you've not done this before, cool. But if you're going to do it, you need to have one of these, because this is where you're going to try. You're not writing it in a notebook. This is live. This is actionable. This is recorded. Like you have this in. You have this in, so nothing falls in the between the cracks ever. And I mean, I don't have time to talk to you about some of the challenges, but yeah. So definitely think you should get a tool. And this is just my information on how to get in touch with me if you do decide that you need some help. Again, like I'm self-implementing, but I'm also very, very happy to help anyone go through this. So I do appreciate you guys having me. And if there's time, maybe a couple minutes, if you have questions, please go ahead.
Definitely a quick observation. It appears that since we're dealing with people in the midst of this, it's not just a business process or measurable goals and all that, which are all incredibly important, is the fact there has to be an element of trust that we are there to help everyone be successful. So it seems like the core values of any company needs to include an element of where trust is an underlying requirement. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree. And if we had more time, I would tell you that that's the most important thing is
Yeah.
like trust between your team. If you don't have it, you won't get to the issues, because they won't bring it up or if someone brings up an issue, like I can bring up an issue or someone can bring up an issue for anybody's department. If they're having issue, you have to make sure that even as facilitating these meetings, if someone brings up an issue, you want to be careful that they don't view it as like, oh, I'm pointing the finger at you, and they have to be comfortable failing. So like part of my whole implementation of this, and I've done this at every part of our organization, is when someone brings a problem up and we got a problem, we had a security breach or something like that or whatever, just as an example. I am thanking that person for bringing it up, thanking them for doing their part in the solution, and telling them to continue to do so. And that might be a different shift for people, but that's how you gain trust amongst, and this isn't at my top level, this is beneath them. Like this is at like these people are in the trenches. If they see a problem and bring it up and part of the solve, I'm thanking them. Because if we don't bring up the issues, then you're gonna have these lingering things out there that never come up. And I tell my SLT team, you must bring these issues up. Like it is your job, you're accountable for it. Like we don't need surprises. Nobody's like, I love problems, and we're going to create problems because we're solving for other things that are going to create problems for other places. But if people get on the same, the level playing field where they don't feel attacked, then, then it's so much better. It's so much better. But I also think the leaders have a part, like at my level, at my visionary level, to set an example of how we deal with them when we have issues.
I'm going to tell my wife's caregiver, who's actually our house caregiver and also takes care of our cats frequently. I'm going to give her credit today when I see her again. And because I'm going to use this as the title of one of those books I may write one day. And it's entitled, and she uses this with our cats all the time when they go meow, 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 meow. Her frequent response is, I hear you. And when I think of that phrase, I hear you, that's kind of the element of trust that you and I are talking about.
I agree.
One quick question, or Stan, when I used to, I still do, to my direct reports, I've always told them, look, let me know any problems you have. But oh, by the way, if you have some kind of a thought about the solution you'd recommend, I'd like to hear that too at the same time. Do you separate that for the discussion phase? In other words, do you identify a problem and then wait and then tell the person, I appreciate you probably have a suggested solution, but we're going to discuss it later?
So what happens is, why you want to get down to the issues is that discussion, you need to hear from everyone.
Okay.
So basically, which is, by the way, a challenge for me, because I'm sitting back in my brain, I'm like, and I'm trying not to do it, but I'm just saying I'm a person. But like, you have to hear from everyone so that they are like, sometimes people are like, no, I agree. I feel like we need to do X or whatever. But like giving time for full discussion, because you don't want to get to the solve without it. And so the discussion is I guess it could be it is separate before you talk about the solution. And then the COO in that meeting, I'm the tiebreaker. So even when my CEO might have something, somebody else has something, and we can't agree, I have to make a decision, and my decision gets abided by. But yeah, the discussion piece is important.
Do you try to make a decision, or let me put it another way, you could make a decision for further discussion?
I can, or if I am part of the discussion too. So I may have some background in something that somebody else may not have, or they have something that I don't have. And I'm like, have to consider two things and then make a decision about it.
Thank you. I'm sorry I have to run, but we've got another meeting.
Nice to meet you, John.
Nice to meet you. Are you in Nashville a lot or not?
Yeah, I am actually.
Oh, all right. I may give you a call, see if we can get coffee or something up in Nashville.
Awesome. That's
Thank
awesome.
you very much. I really enjoyed this. Mark, as always. George, nice to see you, and appreciate your thoughts. So,
Well, John, don't miss that trip on the boat today, man. Yeah.
no, I'm not missing. I'll share something with you. You'll see what the first trip looks like.
Okay, I love it. I love it.
Thanks.
Glad you're here.
Bye, John.
Stephanie, I don't want to rush us off here, but I want to give everybody a chance to feel like if they need to leave. I understand. I appreciate you being here. There is so many components of this that we could go on to multiple hour-and-a-half meetings and beat these up. And I believe this whole idea of let's try to focus on the most important thing. One thing I think you said is 90 days. Did you use the word a human limit? Did you use that phrase?
I did.
Oh my goodness. I've written that down because I kept thinking, I try to be long range thinking, but I have limits and sometimes I push them and I'm not as effective when I go far. So
Yep, I do the same. I booked myself till 9. So if anyone has questions, I am so happy to stay on if you have them. If not, I'm all good.
George, any closing remarks from you or questions?
I've tried to be a sponge here. I'll be honest, this is new ground for me, working with a startup and my role in it. And so it's been an interesting process. I like what you said, Stephanie, about the trust and the way people come together. Interestingly enough, 2 of our team of 7 that's starting this up are former military operators. One is former SEAL Team 6. And if you want to see somebody that's focused and is not, doesn't care about ego, you identify the problem. You might not even know the answer, but let's discuss it and get focused on it. And boy, you talk about focused people. It's amazing.
Yeah, man. Ego is a hard thing.
Yeah, it is.
So hard for like.
I've been guilty of it. This has been an interesting team I'm on.
Good.
I love that word, interesting. I know, I feel you. Startup life. Hi, Kurt. I don't know.
Hi there. I just thought I'd say quickly, first apologize that I arrived very late. I had something happen this morning here that derailed me. And so I missed most of what you said, Stephanie. I came across this topic recently and was interested to hear you, but I see it was recorded, so hopefully I'll be able to listen to it afterwards. And if I have questions, I'll ask you then, because I was playing catch up the whole time.
Oh, awesome. Please do. I really feel passionate about the topic, and I've seen it work, and I know where the pitfalls are and the challenges. And I mean, it's so easy to talk about, but like when you're in it, I mean, like sometimes, I mean, I'm getting beat up sometimes, but I know it's the right thing to do. And over time, like people need time to understand it, to see the change. But in the meantime, they want to throw eggs at your face. So yeah, there's some things that, there are just things there that I'm like, hey, listen, let me just prepare you for what's probably going to happen if you have choices that are like A or B or C. But I am available. Please do reach out. Text is better. I'm horrible at email, just saying. So text me, and I will probably respond a lot faster. I'm looking for EA, so because I don't handle my inbox.
I would connect with Stephanie on LinkedIn. I think for the most 90% of our communication has been through LinkedIn messaging. So she's pretty quick on that. And Kurt, by the way, you only missed maybe 15 or 20 minutes of Stephanie's actual presentation. So, but that first 20 minutes was intense because of the way this program EOS works. So I encourage you to do that. George, thank you for joining us. Kurt, thank you. You could catch part of this, and Charlotte will be making this recording available. So I appreciate everyone here. And Stephanie, thank you so much. This is a provocative topic that keeps us moving, and we have to remember where our role is and that everybody has a role. And
thank you guys for having me.